What's up, everybody? This is Missy from Lansing Hoops, and I'm back at you today with another Teacher Tip Tuesday. So today, what I'm going to do is teach you the 5 things that help your students understand the trick and the techniques that you're teaching and retain it for the future. You can remember these 5 things by remembering the acronym S.P.E.N.D. First off, show. This is where you actually show them the technique that you're going to be doing. You show it with your body and you let them watch. At this point, they're only watching you, not following along. Next, you help them picture it. This is when you use metaphors, examples, and actual verbal descriptions to help them picture something that makes the same shape or the same movement or looks similar. As an example, when I teach my students how to do a weave, I tell them the weave looks like a sideways figure 8 or an infinity sign. This way, in their head, they can imagine what a figure 8 looks like and know that's the shape they're supposed to be making with their arm when they do a weave. Okay, the next step of spending time with your students is to explain the technique. Now, if we use the same example that I used before, I would say to my students, okay, today we're going to do a weave. And what I want you to do is hold the hoop with your thumb on top and your knuckles pointed forward. It looks just like this. So in that example, I show them, which is the first step, and then I explain where their hand needs to be on the hoop. And from there on out, I'll continue explaining the technique. I'll say something like, okay, imagine your thumb as a pencil, and we're going back to that picture again, because they're picturing that their thumb is a pencil. Okay, with your pencil, I want you to go over the top to the left, and then over the top to the right. Let's do it together. Over the top to the left, now backwards, over the top to the right. This is an example of explaining the technique in a more verbose way that gives the students a bigger understanding of what they're supposed to do rather than just having to look at you. Okay, the next step of spending the appropriate amount of time teaching individual tricks to students is the N, or naming the trick. Now, I generally like to do this when I first start teaching, but you can actually do it, and it's helpful to do it throughout teaching the entire trick. It would go something like this. Okay guys, today I'm going to teach you a weave. Why do you guys think it's called a weave? And I say the name twice. Then I let the students tell me what they think, which helps on the picturing part of it, because now they're thinking weave, what does weave mean? Maybe it means that I'm weaving. So when you name the trick, it leads them into picturing it. So anytime you teach a trick, make sure that it has a name. It's helpful if the name looks like whatever the trick does. As an example, when we weave, it looks like a weave. This trick is also commonly referred to as a figure 8 because it looks like a sideways figure 8. So when you name your tricks, try to name them after what it looks like they're doing to give your students a visual picture reminder of what this trick is going to do. Okay, the last step of spending time with your students is to help develop the technique. Developing the technique is actually giving your students time to reflect on what you've been sharing, practice, and make it their own. This is when you actually stop teaching for a moment, stop talking, and allow them to drill, and allow them to practice, and allow them free time to explore what you've just shared. At this point, during development, this trick might not look perfect for these students. Development is not about mastering a technique at that given moment. It's about spending time in that technique, learning how to master it. So in the development phase of teaching, as a teacher, you should be mostly quiet and be giving minimal feedback to your students while allowing them the most amount of space to explore and expand on what you've just taught. This might be quiet, focused free time, drill time, or other exercises that you give them to go over the techniques that you just taught. Really quick, one more time. S, show your students the technique or the trick that you're going to have them do. P, help them picture the technique. Give them metaphors and examples and verbal words of shapes and lines that make the shape so that they can picture it in their own head. E, explain. This is where you expand on everything that you've shared with your students and break it down into minor movements and micro steps. N, name it. Always give your techniques and your tricks a name so that your students have an easy time recalling what it was that you said. D, develop. Let your students have time to practice the technique that you've shared until they can master it for themselves. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments and make sure you subscribe to Lansing Hoops today. If you'd like more teacher tips delivered straight to your inbox, sign up for my newsletter at lansinghoops.com.